These videos only happen because of the support and help from our sponsors. If you need insurance for your bike, go and check out Bike Devil. Support the companies that support us.
After months of not riding bikes, eventually the chance to get back in the saddle came. But what bike to ride? There were so many great new ones. Ducati's new Street Fighter, KTM's updated Super Duke or new Duke 890. Despite the wealth of choice, I had an inkling of which bike I wanted to ride. And that was cemented into place when I heard John say this.
Fastest thing I've ever ridden on the road, and I don't mind admitting, and it'll be the first time I've ever done it as a journo. This bike's too much for me on the road.
Just the push I needed to make my choice. Kawasaki Z H2, come to daddy. Let's start with a couple of numbers. Well, actually, technically 3, but you'll see. 239 kilograms and, parentheses, either 175 or 178 horsepower. That's 4th and 5th gear, respectively. Those power figures put the bike firmly in the same ballpark as things like the Street Fighter, Tuono, and Super Duke. And Kawasaki claim that is the exact market it is looking for. And on the face of things, yes, a big naked shaking its thang trying to make you splurge your money. Yes, they are right in that regard. At the same time, however, it isn't a direct rival in terms of mechanical purpose. The aforementioned trio all have one eye firmly set on razor-esque track action, but 239 fully wet kilos, says the Z, does not. This is because the Z is really a proper roadster, a bit like Honda's CB1000 or Yamaha's MT10 or even Triumph's Speed Triple. Kawasaki have never really chased the pure sports segment of the naked bike market. They focus solely on the road, but that really is to the benefit of us all. Still don't believe me? Well, let's subtract one set of numbers from the first two and add another. A 3, as in the Pirelli Rosso 3 tyres that come on the bike. Within Pirelli's own range, this particular hoop is at least 2 tiers down on the sticky scale, the kind of sticky stuff that you would expect to find on Street Fighters and Tuonos. OE tyres usually give a clear indication of where a bike sits within its class amongst its peers, and that is the case here, although side note, they're pretty good tyres. I rode on them in all weathers, all conditions, and I thought they were excellent. As for the rest of the Z, it sure is a comfy thing. The riding position is actually quite dissimilar to its other Z1000 sibling. It's a lot more relaxed. There's scant weight on the bars, even being over 6 foot, and all controls fall lovely to finger and thumb. There's also Kawasaki's near trademark slickness when it comes to the whole clutch gasser release routine. Smooth as anything. There's lovely lightness to the steering too, and what it lacks in razor sharp turning accuracy, it more than makes up for with this airy feel. It brilliantly hides its weight. Very cleverly done. The traditional Showa BPF suspension is softly set but with an edge of firmness towards either end's respective strokes. Whether or not you may find it too soft or otherwise will basically come down to you, how you ride, but more pertinently, what kind of roads you ride upon. Around my way, the roads are fairly buggered, so to be honest, the stock setup was pretty perfect. The upshot is that the Showa fork and shocks suit the bike about as well as traditional suspension can. I'm well happy with it. The Brembo M432 calipers you will find on a lot of bikes, but they are very good. In fact, they're one of my favourite calipers, and just because they don't come directly off a World Superbike doesn't mean they're not any good. I also thought the slipper clutch was pretty good too when I was banging it down gears. Great working action. Now let's move on to the main attraction, the engine. In itself, not anything particularly special, but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to be solid and reliable enough to contain the star of the show, that supercharger. Combined and tested in 5th gear, 178 horsepower and nearly 130 newton meters of the flattest torque curve I have ever experienced. I could wax on a bit about how the engine responds at slow speeds and stuff, but to be honest with you, it's kind of pointless because it's just nice. It's just nice to biff about on. It's easy to use. Most anybody could ride around on a ZH2 gently without any problems whatsoever. It behaves wonderfully with only the occasional off-heard chirp from the gate reminding you that you're riding something really special. No, the real interest comes when you stick it to sport mode, releasing its full potential and putting yours front and centre. John was right. Try and full gas this thing everywhere and it is too much. It's as simple as that. It can be too much. You need some proper skills to be able to fully tame a bike like this. Now yes, that does make it fun, but on bumpier roads, if you try and get all laissez-faire with the gasser, you'll get a lot of bucking and sliding and TC intervention as the engine just tries to overwhelm everything. Approach with an eager yet measured throttle hand, however, and the Z shines bright, giving you everything you could ever want. The sensations the supercharger provides feels like nothing else out there and makes any uninformed opinion on the bike moot, to say the least. Basically, you need to ride one to experience it and see what we're all talking about. Ocean analogies have been widely used to describe the power and torque on this bike. A tsunami of power, ride the wave of torque. Not wrong, but not fully right either. To me, the water analogy is right, but in a more of a kind of surfing way. So anyone's been surfing or boogie boarding, you'll know you'll catch the wave, you'll feel it pushing you, but you also have the toe of the water going underneath you, pulling backwards, so you're being pushed and pulled at the same time, and that is literally the closest I can get to describing it. Controlling the show is a decent electronic suite, which you access through nice looking switchgear and a lovely full colour dash. It displays all the info you need, MPG, etc. It also displays lean angle, which on the Z I think is probably more of a nice to have gimmick than anything useful, but hey, it's cool, right? The three main preset power modes are accessed here, as is rider mode, which means you can adjust and tinker with electronics as you like. This is including the 3-level traction control / anti-wheelie system, and on the Z both systems are one and the same. Plus there is also an additional slew of other riding systems, all starting with the letter K. In terms of the mode, the lower power modes still feel ridiculously quick, but in sport mode or in full, if you go through the rider mode, that's when the throttle gets a lot more aggressive. Okay, there is an issue or two, but like with most modern bikes, it's so minor as to really seem like nitpicking. For example, the ABS is great. It's a brilliant system, but if you're having to brake really hard on bumpy roads, or if you've gone on track and you've well overcooked it into a turn, the front can get a little skippy and slippy and you feel the weight of the bike building up behind you. It's the only time you actually feel those 240 odd kilograms. A minor problem really, and in honesty, one that is solved by just not going so bloody fast in the first place. Some have complained that the build quality of the Z H2 isn't up to the same spec as the H2, and you know, they're kind of right, but remember this, the H2 is Kawasaki's flagship. It costs £26,000. The Z is meant to be more accessible to more prospective owners and costs a whopping £10,000 less. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with the build quality given where the bike stands. Which brings us all the way around to another complaint, the looks. I'll be honest, pictures of this bike do not do it justice at all. It is much better looking in the flesh. In pictures, it just looks a bit normal. Another moan is that adjusting things electronically isn't very intuitive here. Basic information, MPG, mileage, that kind of stuff is all really easy to get to and understand, and you know, you get it down pat pretty quick. But even after I had the bike for a month, I did not find it particularly intuitive to navigate through the various electronics options. It always felt like I was having to press buttons like crazy, whereas on some other bikes it's blip blap blap bosh, done. But in the Z case, I actually found it much easier to set the bike up how I liked via the Rideology app. So I set it up on the phone, and by the time I got to the bike, all the settings I wanted are already in there. In John's review, he did mention the turning circle, and he is right. I mean, it's not really a problem per se. It can just get a bit irksome and irritating, especially if you're trying to do a slow speed but quick turnaround, and most especially because the Z seems to carry its weight higher up than, say, its Z1000 sibling, where the weight's all kind of at the bottom. The final moan isn't really a moan either, because it's kind of key to how to enjoy this bike. I don't generally like it when a traction control and anti-wheelie system are integrated into one and the same. My usual rapport with electronics is to stick it to full power, put the traction control on the lowest setting, turn off the anti-wheelie, and that'll do. Most anti-wheelie systems irritate the crap out of me because I prefer to moderate wheel lift myself. With the Z, at first, yeah, it annoyed me, it really did. But this was mostly going from really quite slow speeds to full gas. Start carrying some speed with the Z and it all starts to make sense. And then it doesn't just start to make sense, it starts to feel good. And then it starts to feel really good. And then it starts to feel amazing. This is the first time on any modern bike where I've been happy to leave the systems on. Tickling the edge of grip and traction control. Ooh, and if you get a can on, it makes a great staccato brrr noise. What this bike isn't, it's not a wheelie hound like an Yamaha MT-10. It's not a work of art like an MV Brutale. And will struggle to lay a glove on a Super Duke, Street Fighter or Tuono on track. Despite this, however, I'm pretty confident in saying that the Kawasaki Z H2 is about the best super naked option you could buy for the road ever, for a plethora of reasons, including a competitive starting price of 15k going up to 18k for the incoming and probably wonderful electronically suspended version. And when spanked hard, it is as ebullient as any other super naked out there. None of its rivals are currently blown, rumoured MT-09 turbo notwithstanding, but this then means in the naked segment the Z remains special. So there you have it. Get blown, be happy forever. Word.